Moving on. So we recently got some insight on inflation and we got some data. And so let's have a conversation about it because there's two key points. Shout out to Abi. Shout out to you, baby. Keep watching. There's two key points that we really need to hit on as far as this inflation data that really came out lately. And I want to play a couple of different videos in order to illustrate the point for you guys. So make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. If you have not hit a like, then you are really missing out because it ain't no show that's better than this. Listen, if I got a $30 million contract and some other network hired me and said, Anton, we want you to do a show, guess what I'm still going to be doing? On my day job. You're going to have to fire me.
This morning, Americans are paying the price for rising inflation. From the grocery store to housing and transportation, prices were 3.1% higher in January compared to a year ago, which was worse than analysts expected. In response, the Dow plunging 500 points.
While it showed improvement, was not nearly as good as anticipated. Prices are up a lot. So investors were expecting perfection. They didn't get it.
Rent and housing costs increased 0.6%, a major driver of inflation. Getting behind the wheel of a car, also more expensive.
It's a lot more to purchase a car, particularly a new vehicle. And because of that, it costs a lot more to get insurance on a car.
Prices for many groceries also on the rise, including cereal and beverages.
We're seeing prices rise for fruits and vegetables. They were up a lot during the month. Soda prices jumped a lot. So
what are the three key factors that they sharing with us? The things that are most important to you: housing, food, and transportation. Housing, I'm going to read that shortly, Zach. Food and transportation are the key drivers in the disappointment in inflation numbers. Well, what is inflation for the new people that come here? Basically, from a C student's perspective, it means that your dollar doesn't go as far. The value of your dollar is falling significantly. It doesn't stretch as far. If you want to use an example, an illustration to understand what I'm talking about, 15 years ago, you can get a car for $20-something thousand. That no longer exists. In the 90s and the 80s, you can get a brand new vehicle for under $20,000. That doesn't exist anymore. In the 70s and the 80s, you can get a movie ticket for like $3. You know what I'm saying? You can get a whole car for like $4,000, brand new, spanking brand new off the lot. Now you cannot buy a car for any less than $40,000 to $50,000. On average, the average car note is almost like $1,000 for a car. You cannot go to the grocery store and get more than 10 items unless you're going to Aldi for less than $80. You cannot find housing in certain cities, and housing is actually getting smaller and it's costing you more. And so in order to be able to sell you more effectively, they just put more features in the facility that's shared amongst everybody that's inside of the facility. So in a sense, what it's basically communicating to you is that the value of your dollar is continuing to fall, and the costs that's driving it is things that are directly tied to your lifestyle, right? And so when they look at inflation data, what they're trying to do is keep it somewhere around the 2% range. Now, a couple years ago, it was in the 9 to 10% range. They're trying to keep it in the 2% range. Well, what is the 2% range? It doesn't mean that inflation is not going to continue to go up. It doesn't mean that the value of your dollar is not going to continue to go down. And there's also different factors that factor into why your dollar is going to continue to go down. They continue to print money, the national deficit, costs, paying people more money, even though their lifestyle is not going to change, because then the cost of doing business and the cost of continuing to do the things that you do every day, it continues to go up. So even if you make $25 an hour, it's still going to spend like you're making $10 an hour 10 years ago, because the cost of living is continuing to go up. So it doesn't matter how high you drive wages artificially. That has to be a natural progression as far as what capitalism truly is, right? And so what we do over at the Bag Chasers is that we figure out ways to continue to make our money work for us so that we don't have to work as hard for it, And we continue to beat the rate of inflation so that the value of our dollar goes much further than the general population, right? So you don't have to work the rest of your life in order to live the life that you really want to live. And that's why you need to tap into the bag chasers. But ideally, the things that are driving up the cost and the inflation itself is transportation, food costs, and housing. All right?
All in all, prices for food are growing more slowly than they have been, but there's still, things that we all enjoy where prices are still jumping.
Since January 2020, just before the pandemic, grocery prices are up a whopping 25%. And beef prices could hit a record high this year due to bad weather and feed costs. To keep up with the cost of living, more workers are pushing for higher wages.
And that's not how you drive down inflation. You can't keep up by trying to keep up. This is why this is why we tell you, you will never, ever be able to save your way to wealth. You can't save your way to wealth because as soon as you get it, the value of it continues to go down, and that's why your money has to be continuously working for you. Your money has to be working for you 24/7, 365. Every dollar that you make is a little employee. Shout out to Spaces. You can't protest your way to wealth. You can't save your way to wealth. You can't finesse your way to wealth. It doesn't even matter. $1 million $1 million don't even hit the same as it used to in yesteryear. I showed the chasers $1 million on Sunday. That's a fact, though. Receipts is in there. I showed the chasers $1 million on Sunday, and that junk don't even mean nothing to me. I still wear T-shirts and free hats. $1 million ain't the same as when we was in the 90s talking about, man, $1 million? It don't hit the same. It does not hit the same. Let me flip this real quick, and let me help y'all to understand something. At the same time, let's deep dive into the housing market.
Let's bring in Breitbart economics and finance editor John Carney. John was talking over Hillary Vaughn. No, I'm just kidding. You said it's an important point, and then
right.
Go.
Well, so what we're seeing is a rise in delinquencies at a period when we have very low unemployment. If unemployment starts to creep up to near historical
and credit cards,
right?
So,
high delinquencies in credit cards and auto loans, and if we start to see the unemployment rate creep up, remember we're at 3.7, so people aren't able to pay their bills even though everybody has a job. If people start to lose their jobs, which the Fed says is going to happen, then we're going to see those delinquency rates skyrocket.
And now everything is already, the only reason that half of the people was holding on the way that they was holding on was because there was moratoriums in place. It was payment pauses on student loans. It was moratoriums in place as far as rent. And for 3 years, people in California, Atlanta, all of these different people, for 3 years, everybody was living high on a hog and they was out here buying G-Wagons, right? But now you got to pay the piper. And the piper is saying, listen, unemployment may be low, and that's the thing that the Biden administration is championing. Oh, man, we keep a lot of jobs available. But you still can't keep up with the cost of living. And when inflation was at 9% and you was only getting a 1-2% raise, your lifestyle and your standard of living was going down. You just didn't know it yet. And so your dollar didn't stretch as far. And so the quality of your life is going down. And so instead of you continuing to work, because I believe in hustling, I believe in working. I do believe in hustling and I believe in working. I am a hard worker and I'm a hustling. But I also believe in being a good steward of your resources. And so it's not just about how much money you make. That's only 25% of the equation. It's also how much of your money do you keep? And then the other part of the equation that they don't want to talk about is how much do you invest? You know what y'all have become? And I say y'all because I'm talking about the people that's not a part of the bag chasers. Shout out to the chasers. Y'all have not just only become consumers. Y'all have become the finessed. And you know the interesting thing about inflation is that it doesn't really tell you the full truth when they report the numbers. Because they're not really telling you what the true cost of this food is and the true cost of gas is and the true cost of living is and the true cost of a vacation, because what you're actually paying is interest on top of interest for the things that you say that you really want. So for example, let's say you say, okay, well, listen, I want to buy a house, and I bought my house for $400,000. And every payment that you make for the next 12 to 13 years does not go into the principal. It goes into the interest. That means you're paying them for the opportunity to possibly own your home in 30 years. You're giving them free money for the possibility of owning your home outright and only having to pay property taxes and insurance on it, and still have to maintain the property 30 years from now. $30 years. You're giving them free money for the sweepstakes of never missing a payment for 30 years. You have to make 30 years worth of payments. And by the time you get done making the payments on that house, just in mortgage payments alone, you wind up paying for the house 3 to 4 times over. And if you don't pay your property taxes on time for the next 3 years, they still can take your property and sell it off. And the true cost of owning that property, it still hasn't been realized because you haven't even calculated all the additional costs that goes into living there. And so we sit here and we have a conversation and we say, well, it's always better to own than to rent. But we're not asking that third question, and we're not using our third eye. And the other part of the equation is, well, what's better than just buying it? Because you say, listen, buying is better than renting, but what's better than buying? Or rather, mortgaging? That's the question that you're not asking yourself. Why are we not putting our brains to work? We so creative. We will figure out every which way to do everything the wrong way. We will figure it out. Somehow all y'all became chemists and learned how to stomp on that coke in order to get the most out of it as far as the finances of it, but still have somewhat of the similar effect on the people. And then you chopped it up and you stomped on it, and then you made it from pure to only 65, 55, 35, 45%, but you was able to maximize your profit from it. But you can't figure out how to not get finessed by the banks. You can't figure out how to remove the amount of money that you have to pay over into taxes, and it's already there. We ain't even got to become chemists as a result of it. You over here getting finesse, and you still letting them preach the same old. Man, this is called arbitrage. So I'm going to take my money, I'm going to use everybody else's money in order to make more money and hope that I make just as much money or more than what it is that I got to pay in interest. And then I'm going to take the difference and I'm going to use it for myself. And that's called arbitrage. It's called dummies. Banks is the only ones that win, no matter what. So you give them their money. You put money in the bank in order for them to take your money and lend it to other people to make more money, and then you saying that you're using other people's money in order to make money. How does that make sense? I'm going to put money in the bank so that they can take my money and then lend it to other people. Let's rephrase it. Let's rephrase that. I'm going to put money in the bank so that they can take your money and lend it back to you so you can pay them for the opportunity to not have to pay them 30 years from now for the place that you live in. Somebody asked me a question last night, and they said, Anton, would you let your daughter, or no, they said, if you had a son, would you have them stay in the house as long with you as your daughter? Because I said that my daughter is always going to be with me until she gets married, right? And I said, absolutely. I said, listen, I would never require my kid to move out. As a matter of fact, my daughter has basically stacked up and invested at least 25 to 50% of everything that she's ever gotten, including birthday money, allowance, any money that she got as far as little businesses that she started, the entirety of it. My daughter, by the time that she graduates high school and then probably college, will have enough as far as how it is that she's invested her money or how I've managed her money to be able to go out and buy her own house. And I'm not talking about financing a house. I'm talking about buying her own property. And when I say we need to change the way that we operate within our culture and within our families and how it is that we do things, how much further ahead can you get if you decided to keep all of that money in your pocket and you stayed in a house until you was 30 while not crashing out and acquiring a whole bunch of debt, but stacking your bread up and then ultimately being able to own it outright without any kind of financing in the first place? Why pay it to them instead of paying it to yourself and then buying it outright to where you don't have to go through the bank in the first place? This ain't rocket science, y'all. We're not talking about something that's overly complicated. The problem is that we keep wanting to do what everybody else is doing. This is not overly complicated. This is not something that is a moment. That's your ego talking to you because you want to have you a little fine thing in there and you don't want to answer to nobody. Why not invest in yourself so that you'll make more resources and then be able to reinvest back into whatever it is that you're going to put your money into instead of giving it over in interest? Why not lower your cost of living during the time that ain't nobody even going to care about what was happening during the time that you was 20 anyway, so you can live the rest of your life the way that you want to? Yo, when I was 20 years old, we had the Birdman prowlers and stuff and the excursions with the TVs in the back and all of that stuff. Man, if you look at that junk now, don't nobody care about that junk. Nobody care about the stuff that y'all thought was popping. The stuff that's popping today, it ain't even going to matter. It's going to be old. But instead of putting your money in assets and staying home and staying down and working and making a sacrifice so that you can do the thing that's going to be in your best interest, 10 years is too long. But 10 years ain't too long when your homeboy took that plea deal and he going to be getting out of jail in 10 because he really got 15, but he going to get off of good behavior and he going to do a little bit of snitching so he'll be out in 10. Oh, man, I can do a dime. That ain't nothing. He's sitting down on that dime, but you can't make the investment for your best interest in your future and staying down and aligning yourself with people. Man, listen, y'all got a whole community of people that's around y'all. I've built the community. I've given you guys the community. Some of y'all are connected through each other, through the Patreon. Man, I don't know why y'all not leveraging each other. Y'all can leverage each other for opportunities. Y'all can leverage each other for new jobs, new contracts, government contracts. Y'all can leverage each other for information, different industries that y'all in, influence. Y'all can leverage each other. Y'all need to literally be connecting with each other and leveraging each other, staying with each other, building with each other. That's how you become successful. That's the whole idea behind networking. That's what marriage is. Y'all ain't gonna hear me. I'm just talking.